Welcome to today's webinar on travel trends and what to look out for in business travel in 2026. The definition of a successful business trip has changed dramatically over the last few years, and it now means something different. From employee expectations to AI automation to measuring in-person meeting success, there's a lot to keep on top of. Business travel is really shifting from transactional logistics to tech-enabled, employee-centric travel programs. So today, I've got an awesome panel here who's going to help us explore what's changing in the world of business travel and why, what are some of the top trends around AI's impact, how to rethink return on investment, and no-nonsense expectations of loyalty programs. We're going to dig into practical ways to incorporate these trends at your company, and we're going to look at how to design trips that help to really transform business travel from a cost center to a growth channel. So joining me today, I have got David Holyoke from Serco and Josh Hood from Booking. Welcome, Josh and David.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Happy to be here.
So let's start with a little bit of credibility establishment. What do you guys know about business travel? David, you've worked in the industry for...
I've been in the industry for about 30 years. Started in the airline industry, then had the privilege of running a travel management company, spent almost a decade at Airbnb, and obviously Serco the last 2 years, but about 30 years total in travel, and 20 years of that in the business travel industry itself.
And your role at Serco is Senior Vice President of Product, and that's looking after Booking.com for Business as well, right?
Yeah, it is, yes.
Cool. And Josh, joining us from Booking.com for Business. Tell us about your background in business travel.
Yeah, so my background actually isn't in travel. It's in e-commerce and startups. I joined Booking.com 11 years ago, and I got thrust into business travel. I started off as a product person, making our own website better for people that were traveling for work. From there, I took our content and distributed it out into the TMCs and online booking tools. That's how I first got to know Serco. And then since 2019, I've had the pleasure of running Booking.com for Business, which is now our business travel tool designed for small to medium-sized businesses. And for me, it's not really about business travel. It's about making a product that's absolutely incredible. The fact that it's in business travel is nice, but I just like making the world better for people.
You two have great depth of industry experience, but I just want to test your credibility in terms of real world lived experience and how much time you each spend traveling for work. So Josh, in 2025, how many trips would you have taken?
Easily 24 to 30. What's important to note there is that these are not intra-country trips or even inter-Europe trips, but they're all crossing at least one ocean. So I this year I hit Platinum for Life on KLM, which means for 10 years in economy, I have flown enough to achieve Platinum status, which is, I don't know, a couple million miles, I think, over the last 10 years.
Okay,
Okay,
well, you tick the credibility box. You've got the lived experience. David, what about even in 2026, this year alone? How many days away from home will you likely have spent?
For the start of this calendar year, yeah, almost a month already away. Yeah, and that's just because I would say for me, the nature of travel has changed quite a bit. I'm doing a lot more international travel, longer trips, longer durations. I think that's exciting. You know, I love travel. I've been to 78 countries myself personally, some through work, but mainly most for personal reasons. So, you know, I've always enjoyed visiting certain destinations, have a lot of great opportunity with that. But yeah, it definitely longer than maybe the high frequency number of trips that I've had. And I'm pretty excited. You know, I've hit million miler status on American, United, and I am within striking distance on Delta. So that's pretty interesting and exciting for me.
Okay. I'm excited that you said 1 month because I've only been gone 3 weeks out of the last, 9 weeks? So see, honey, I'm home a lot.
Okay, I think we've established that you guys know what you're talking about. So let's dig into that. Okay, so business travel, according to many sources, has gone through quite a reset or a transformation over the last few years. If we were to rewrite the rule book of business travel today versus what it's been like in the past, what would the first page say?
Yeah, so I think the biggest change has been it's no longer about headquarters or corporate offices. It's about bringing people together for meaningful connections, right? If we look at what's changed in the last 5 years, we've moved to a distributed workforce that's largely working from home or at least in hybrid capabilities. But at the same time, we've seen even the makers of software that enable those hybrid connections, right, requiring all of their workforce to go back into the office to work face to face. So the need to connect face to face hasn't changed, but where we go to has changed. So that means we take more meaningful trips. They're less frequent than they were before, but they're filled with intention. And so they might be longer periods of time. They might be in more remote locations or different sort of cities as we balance the needs of our workforce to travel to reach there within a single direct flight, let's say, versus multiple trips, reasonable costs for hotels, capacity for events, those sort of things. So it's no longer about having like a negotiated rate directly next to in the hotel across from your headquarters, but it's really about having a travel program that's flexible and adaptable to disruption, to ever-changing needs.
David, what about the principles around kind of the purpose of a trip and the reason why people travel in the first place? Do you think that's changed at all over the last few years?
Well, look, I think there's always still the same, like, your business meetings or client meetings, your conferences and such. But I do think to elaborate further on Josh's point, like this teams coming together, right? Team offsites, I think is actually, happened a lot more. And so those moments of an employee-to-employee connection, because you're in a more decentralized workforce, has certainly transformed travel and the type of travel that happens. And what you do on that trip, I think, is certainly something that's evolved quite a bit.
So the report that we put out really dug into this concept of justifying the journey, which is about making trips intentional and measurable. And for years, the purpose of the travel program was very simple. It was all about being focused on cost control. But this report talks about justifying the journey. What do you think that means in practice and as it relates to return on investment?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say there is before there probably wasn't, there was always scrutiny around travel spend, but I think there wasn't as much around, those decisions were probably pushed down quite a bit between an individual and a manager. And I think you're seeing a lot more oversight within organizations to really understand the nature of travel, what the return on that is, the reason for that, and so what's pushing a lot more with employees is combining aspects of trip, getting more out of one trip than maybe where you would have broken that down into pieces before. So that certainly is changing a lot in terms of justifying the ROI.
Yeah, I would add to that. It's really about a focus on the outcomes, right? So we're going to bring our team together. Let's bring them together for a week. What do we want the team to get from that, right? It's not about making sure that we have the absolute cheapest flight that requires them to fly, at 5 a.m. It's about how do we get them ready for the event? How do they arrive in a place where we can get the most outcomes together for whatever the purpose is, whether we're going to an event together to go talk to customers, whether it's to come together for trainings, having a really clear focus on what are we looking to accomplish from this? And then afterwards, looking back and saying, okay, well, did we actually accomplish it? Did we get the sale? Did we get the learnings? Have we had a behavioral change in the way that our team comes together? Those sort of things, being really clear about what the intention is, and then going back and measuring what the results were, help drive a much more meaningful travel program, and one that's much more easy to justify the costs on. Because if everyone is able to understand what the outcomes were and understands the value of those, then when you go to plan your next trip, it's much easier to get past budget approval.
Yeah, so I think that's actually something that a lot of companies really struggle with, which is how do you capture the outcomes and how do you measure the success of a trip and then use that to feed back into kind of the evolution of the travel program. Have you either of you seen any company really get that right in terms of how to kind of measure the value?
I think get that right is a bit of a loaded question because the answer of what's right will change for every single company. So if I look at Booking for Business, right? So at this point, we have a fairly large team. We go to events all over the world. we measure the outcome of those events. How many people did we talk to? How many real meaningful conversations did we have? How many customers resulted from that? What's the production of those customers that we met at that event and that we wouldn't have ever gotten to talk to? They'd never get to experience Booking for Business if we weren't there. And then you look at that over a period of time and you realize that some activities are really good for that and some aren't as good. We brought my entire team from all over the world together for training last year in Amsterdam. And what we found was that what was 1 week of training led to basically 3 weeks of lost productivity, because people took vacations before and after the trip because they had never been to Europe before. And now we've rethought the way that we bring people together. Now we're bringing individual teams over for highly impactful work of let's solve this one problem together versus trying to construct an event for 40 plus people from around the world.
At its heart, booking a business trip is a little bit like procurement, right? You're procuring some form of goods or services on behalf of the company. Outside of business travel, there's different kind of business cases that need to be made depending on the quantum of that spend. Do you think business travel is held to a higher or a lower bar compared to those other kind of cost centers or investments that you'd be making?
I would say probably a higher bar, right? There is a lot of process that's typically put into place to scrutinize what I think 99% of the time employees get right. I think employees are generally aware that they are stewards of the company's money. They take that, well. They usually make some sacrifices, probably what they, don't want to do, but they know it's the right thing to do in that regard. And I'm not sure that you have to put all that process in place. I'm not advocating for not having policy, compliance, governance, anything in that regard. But I think generally, understanding that employees do the right thing and recognizing that, and maybe not the same level of scrutiny that you see pop up quite often.
Actually, I would say that's held to a lower bar for many of the reasons that you just said, right? Like if I'm going to buy a piece of equipment, how much does this equipment cost? How long is it going to be serviceable for? What's the expected return on investment over the next 3 to 5 years? I have to have all those calculations, maintenance costs, all those sorts of things. Whereas business trips are cheaper than a piece of equipment. It's understood that there is value in connecting and talking to people. So I think the threshold of having to demonstrate like a 3-year return on investment of 5x or something like that you'd have in a typical capital expense is not there on the business travel side, right? It's like we understand that you're going to go, even if in the short term we can't completely measure what the outcome of it is, we know that long term there's benefits, even if they're more difficult to measure than other business expenses.
Okay, now we're going to dig into Gen Z, which is a little ironic given the three of us are old enough to be parents, I think, of Gen Z. But they are entering the workforce in a big way, and they're expected to be more than a third of the global workforce within the next 10 years. And that's going to have an impact on travel programs. Gen Z broadly expect to be able to combine work, well-being, and personal growth when it comes to business travel. This report identified that Gen Z is actually reshaping their expectations around business travel or what they want from business travel. So what do you see them demanding that previous generations didn't?
So I think demand is a strong word, right? I would say that they tend to preference things, right? Because I don't want to, as a parent of a Gen Z son, like it's not my son's not going around demanding things. He just expects some things to work, right? Like he expects that he should be able to access his bookings on a mobile phone, right? Whereas 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you didn't have that expectation. It's not a demand. It's really like there are certain expectations around that you should be able to find properties that are sustainable, that you should be able to offset your carbon emissions when you're taking a flight, or in some cases you travel by rail instead of taking a flight, because certainly more aware of the impact of global warming and emissions, those sort of things. But I hate to use the word demand here because it construes of entitlement, right? Which is not the case at all. I think that they're very aware of their place in the world, and that they're contributing a lot to the workforce and will continue to contribute to that workforce. And they want to do it in a way that is meaningful, and they're not entirely driven by money, but also experience. So you see trips getting extended for a weekend to be able to take in the sights of a local city. You see an emphasis on wellness and understanding that, the 4 a.m. flight, probably not the best thing in the world, and they're not showing up in the best way, just like we were never showing up in the best way. But it was more of an expectation, right? That you hop the red eye, show up in the client meeting at 7 a.m. and then you fly out the same day, when in reality, if that was structured differently, you could have probably had better outcomes. If anything, they're just more vocal in their ability to defend for themselves and really push for those outcomes, versus just accepting the status quo, which I think is something to be admired.
So let's just pick up on your comment there around expectations, and I'm going to turn to you for this one, David. And there's this theme of fluid expectations, right, where employees are bringing their expectations of a user experience from what they have in their personal life into the working environment. Now, traditionally, people were quite okay with the fact they're going to have to use a clunky old system to kind of book their travel. It was going to require probably some degree of training to even be able to use it. Is that still the case? And if not, like, how are companies ready for that shift? And what kind of progress are the technology providers making in that space?
Yeah, look, as a parent to 3 Gen Z daughters, but I'd also preface this: I think every generation questions why, but I think you've got a generation that's questioning even more why now, and I think that starts with tooling in general. Right? You're seeing a blurring of what they use in their personal lives and how that comes across into their professional lives, and they're asking for simplicity, and they're asking for things that are just really easy to use. And I would say that's really where the industry has a real opportunity to create experiences and user interfaces that really resonate with this generation and works the way that they want. If anything, I think you're going to continue to see people pushing the boundaries of bringing things in that companies are going to have to continue to adapt with. I know that's always uncomfortable, but that's happened, right? Think about when smartphones came about, right? It was just more and more that IT departments had to adapt, right? And the same thing when the dawn of the internet came in terms of corporate booking tool in that area. But I think you had a generation here that I don't think it's drastically different. I think it just has different expectations to a certain degree. They value experience, right? Who doesn't when it comes to travel? Can you get the most out of it? But they're more vocal about that they're going to do that, and they're clear about that to their employers. And certainly they're going to choose suppliers and brands that really align to their values. And I think that's something when you look at a program that you need to make sure you're adapting and bringing into the program.
Okay, it's no surprise that the report highlights the advances in AI automation and the impact of agentic tools in business travel, and that's impacting everything from booking and planning trips through to approval and expense processes as well. So, Josh and David, as AI is entering the world of business travel fast, what parts of the business travel journey do you see being totally automated in the next few years, and what do you see as remaining fairly manual or traditional?
On the automated side, and this is one I'm really pushing for, is expenses, right? Like, the amount of time that I think we collectively spend on expenses is far too high. And this is my chance to let everyone know that's watching this. We now have a Booking.com for Business app with expense integrated into it. Woohoo! Where you can do automated receipt capture. You press one button, it takes a picture of the receipt, and everything is filled out for you. You're not typing anything in, you just have to take a quick look. Yep, this is right. Submit. It's amazing. It makes me so happy. The whole reason why I had the team develop it was because I can't take it anymore, the amount of work on expenses. So really excited to never do an expense receipt again within 5 years. or approve expenses again. I get no joy from approving the expenses of my entire team. Like, we have rules. We understand how long an Uber takes or how much a meal is at McDonald's. I shouldn't have to review every single one of those.
Love that.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback on expense for a moment, just because I do think that's a pain point. I think there is a real opportunity with AI and agentic capabilities, and with that is you're building smarter and more intelligent systems. It should be able to capture what the decisions and the options that somebody looked at the point of sale, and really bringing more context down to the travel manager or to the company itself, that the employee made the right decision, versus maybe after the fact when there's so much time that could have went by from when they made the choice to when they actually filed the expense. So I think there's a real opportunity there. I think the other is just, it is that degree of personalization, being less solutions that are less reactive and more proactive. I think as you build smarter, more intelligent, and you bring those opportunities in, there's an opportunity to continue to surprise and delight, and not just be a place where you process an order, but actually, really become a more helpful assistant or problem solver along that travel journey.
Well, that's actually really positive hearing from you both on that, because I think there's a lot of fear about AI and the threat of it taking away jobs and eliminating things that we currently do. But if it's going to get rid of expense processing, that sounds amazing. That's a future I'm into.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is best used when it removes drudgery, right? Like, I want my AI to do my dishes. I don't want my AI to do my art, right?
Josh, just picking up on one of the points you made there around mobile and the mobile app, what are you seeing in terms of the usage of mobile tools for booking and managing business travel versus browser?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on who the user is, right? So on an individual basis, me booking for myself, so many of those transactions happen on a mobile device now. A lot of times, I hate to admit this, I fly somewhere and realize I forgot to book my hotel. So, like, I'm in the taxi figuring out where I'm going to go and booking a hotel in the moment. Whereas for people that book travel for others, that remains more of a desktop experience, where they're able to go look at all the options, really zoom in and make a more considered choice on what they're looking for. It brings me back to, I don't know that it's the same for Gen Z, but millennials talk about the idea that for big purchases, you have to use a computer, right? You would never buy a car on a phone. You'd buy a car on a computer, but the phone is for more spur of the moment things. It seems like travel, when at least booking for others, is still more of that big decision. I want to look at all my options. I want to have 30 tabs open, sort of thing. And I'm looking forward to the day where, for everyone, whether you're booking for yourself or booking for someone else, it becomes something that seems very simple, very risk-free, and that you're comfortable doing it all on the phone, or eventually on a watch, or you just yell out, "Hey, book me a trip. Your trip's booked." Yeah.
Hey, David, just circling back to something you said earlier about the context of when a traveler makes the booking, of kind of what were the options available at the time, and kind of being able to have that context when it comes to kind of justifying it. So that kind of lends itself to more of a dynamic kind of travel policy application, which is more about, hey, we want you to be booking the best option based on availability at that point in time. But in reality, a lot of travel policies are very static. So it sounds like the technology is getting there, but are travel policies, are companies ready for their travel policies to become dynamic, do you think?
I think so, because I mean, I think most travel managers would probably say that their policy, comes across as black and white, but there is a lot of gray. Cities have events, they have compression moments, and where the policy is generally as a good guardrail, there aren't viable options sometimes in certain sellout situations at that point. And is the expectation to take something maybe not of the safest or best quality? I don't think that is the case. Or versus maybe understanding that policy needs to flux and adjust. And I think if you're bringing all of that context and that information against like those policy parameters, and really helping guide about when there's those moments that needs to flex and adjust, based on the options that are out there, I think that just gives companies a lot better ability to kind of control. You could also argue that could go the other way as well, right? Cities that maybe where the policy is too high, and absolutely that, it could come down and still deliver on the value and the comfort that a traveler would expect. So I don't know why anybody wouldn't be open to that flexibility, because I don't think we live in a very static world. I think we live in a very dynamic. Prices change, opportunities, events kind of evolve a little bit, and that just allows for that flexibility.
Okay, let's look at a prediction from each of you for the future of business travel. And let's start with one thing that you predict is going to disappear from business travel in the next few years.
Disappear completely from business travel. I'd like to say the need for outside help, right? Like I'd like to say that as we continue to make our products better, as AI steps in and helps us in agentic ways, we're able to handle disruption, we're able to handle changes, we're able to handle anything that comes up without needing anyone's support or help, right? Our tools are doing it for us. Our agents are doing it for us, but we are completely self-empowered in order to have those changes made or to make those changes ourselves without ever trying to pick up a phone call and wait on hold for someone to help us.
That's a fantastic prediction. Love that. David?
Yeah, he stole mine. I would say the same. I mean, I think I want and I expect that standing in airport line queues or holding on the line for phone calls to get some level of assistance needs to go away. I think in a world of more intelligence and where you can bring to the table, you can get people to solutions a lot quicker, a lot easier, and they shouldn't have to go through that friction and that pain point. It's just one of the most stressful parts of travel. I think there's just a real opportunity to eliminate that, and I don't know why anybody in any facet of business travel wouldn't want to make that experience better for folks.
Okay, I am totally on board with those predictions. That is a future of business travel that I definitely buy into. What about your prediction of one thing that will become standard in business travel that maybe isn't currently today?
For me, it's personalization, right? I think when you think about the amount of a travel that happens in business travel, doing say a dozen trips or more a year, the type of that travel, a business travel is pretty kind of zoned in on what he or she may need and the aspects of that, and then they would expand their horizon. So real opportunity to get a more personalized experience in that way, and so I think there's finally that opportunity to start to just create more value, help people cut through all of the content and get to the choices that they want and just deliver a quicker and more rewarding experience. So.
Yeah, I would look at that I can do everything with my phone. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so I've booked the trip, the car's coming to pick me up, take me to the airport, I check in, here's my boarding pass, right? I get on the flight, I arrive to the car rental counter, my phone unlocks the car that I hop into, I drive to the hotel, it unlocks the door because I've already know what door I'm going on to. I'm not checking in to the rental car counter. I'm not giving you my license for the 30th time. You don't need my home address again because everything's passed through to you.
And using your digital wallet.
Yeah, and everything just becomes so much easier and friction-free. And I'm spending my time accomplishing the goals of whatever the business trip is. I'm not spending my time filling out paperwork.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah, I'm all in on that as well. So with that in mind, final prediction, what is, or recommendation, or even what is one thing that companies should start doing tomorrow to be delivering a better travel program?
Really analyzing what matters, right? It's really, really easy to go, we need a travel program, so therefore we're going to put in these budgets in place and we're going to put in these controls. But having clear understanding of what the objective that they're trying to get out of it, right? Because it's so easy to put in a whole lot of controls that actually don't contribute to those values. I'll give you an example. Every trip I take, I have to fill out expenses like I've talked about. As part of those expenses, I have to say not just that it was a meal, but whether I had breakfast or lunch or dinner and where I had it at, even though the receipt says that it was at McDonald's in some cases, right? You talk to procurement and you say, hey, why do I have to fill this out? And they go, well, if we have enough spend at a particular vendor, we can negotiate a discount. I assure you, no one at Starbucks or McDonald's is giving anyone a discount because our employees are going there, right? Like the idea of let's just collect data for data collection sake is ridiculous. And it just makes people like me on a webinar now talk about how bad the experience is for all of our employees. So stop doing that.
David, one thing that companies should start thinking about doing tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd say start looking at the total trip value. And what I mean by that is travelers have, in some cases, status on airlines or with the hoteliers, and those things bring additional value to the table. And a lot of times policies are pretty black and white around like, you can only spend this much. But the cost of a ticket isn't anymore the base fare. It's all the ancillaries that get added onto it. I need my seats. I need to check a bag, perhaps. Maybe I want early check-in to get onto those things. And for some people, that adds up quite a bit. But if you have status or you have value, I don't know that programs always take that into account and recognize the value that a traveler might be bringing to the table. And what does that extend to that individual going forward. So I think having clear understanding of that, but also recognition that there are employees that are bringing additional value and savings to the table.
So it's pretty clear that 2026 is going to be just as turbulent as the last few years when it comes to business travel. So I want to say a big thank you to our panelists today, to David and Josh, for sharing some of their insights and some of their experience to help you navigate better travel programs in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.